All right, everybody, welcome in. You ready to dive into something fascinating? Let's talk about JD Vance.
Oh, this is going to be good.
Now, most folks, they know him from that book, Hillbilly Elegy, right? But this guy's gone from penning that sharp social commentary to, well, to being a Trump-endorsed senator. And that's a heck of a journey.
It's quite a head-scratcher when you really look at it.
Because, and we're going to get into this, but this isn't just the simple difference of opinion kind of thing. In 2016, Vance was straight up calling Trump terrible for the country.
He did not mince words, that's for sure.
No, he did not. He even compared the whole MAGA movement to a quick high, likened Trump to, get this, heroin. We're talking strong words.
Yeah, so the question becomes, was Vance being sincere with all that? Or was there maybe a little strategizing going on? Like, was he already thinking about a future in politics?
Yeah. It's interesting because even after Trump won, Vance was still publicly questioning whether he could actually lead. So it really makes you wonder if he'd already started picturing himself in the political arena.
It's possible. Now, as we get closer to Vance actually running for Senate, though, well, things start to change.
Oh, yeah. And not subtly either, right?
Not at all. Suddenly you start hearing these, well, Trumpian themes popping up more and more. Immigration, China, those elites.
It's like you took a page right out of Trump's playbook.
It's interesting, though, even while he's seemingly adopting some of Trump's, let's call it, greatest hits on certain issues, Vance doesn't shy away from calling out some core Republican beliefs.
Like what? Give us an example.
Well, he's been openly skeptical about things like tax cuts and deregulation. Argues they haven't really done much for the very people he wrote about in Hillbilly Elegy, the white working class.
Which, let's be honest, that's a pretty bold stance for a Republican to take, questioning that whole trickle-down economics idea.
Exactly. And it suggests that maybe, just maybe, there are cracks starting to show in that Republican United Front. You've got figures like Vance who seem ready to challenge the old ways of thinking.
And he wasn't done with shaking things up either.
Oh, not even close. He doubled down and actually suggested taxing the wealthy.
Okay, no, that's got to ruffle some feathers in the GOP.
You better believe it. And get this, he even tossed out the idea of raising taxes specifically on people without children. I mean, talk about a statement designed to get people talking.
Wow. No kidding. It's almost like he's trying to find this middle ground, between that classic conservative approach to the economy and something more focused on working folks.
Right. Like he's echoing bits of what Trump was saying, but suggesting a different way to get there.
And remember when he said that conservatives should actually prioritize the nuclear family over, get this, free market principles?
I do. What does that even mean for the Republican Party going forward? Like, are we seeing the beginnings of some major ideological shift?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It really makes you think, right? Is this truly him changing his core beliefs? Or is Vance just really good at figuring out where the Republican Party's at and positioning himself accordingly? Because this dossier, it doesn't just talk economics. We get a peek into his views on social issues, too, and some of it. Well, you might be surprised.
Oh, yeah. Give me an example.
Well, take his comments on the whole George Floyd protests and the COVID situation. I mean, the guy really went after public health officials, saying they were basically playing favorites.
What do you mean playing favorites?
His words basically were that these officials were totally fine with, like, Black Lives Matter protests happening, but came down hard on anyone protesting against lockdowns. Like, there was a double standard going on.
Interesting.
It's actually pretty typical Vance when you think about it. He's really good at tapping into that sense of, I don't know, grievance, frustration that a lot of conservative voters are feeling. Then he points it at something specific, makes it a target. And
it's not just the protests themselves, right? He waded right into the whole COVID debate when he went after Michigan's Governor Whitmer. Remember that?
Oh, how could I forget? Wasn't pretty.
He slammed her for keeping abortion clinics open during the lockdown.
Which, when you think about it, is a pretty savvy political move.
Yeah.
It connects those two hot-button issues, abortion and lockdowns, in a way that's guaranteed to get attention, especially with certain voters.
So we're seeing him side with that more conservative base on those really divisive cultural topics. But then we get to abortion itself and things get, well, murky, to say the least.
Murky's a good word for it.
Because he comes out against late-term abortions, which, okay, we're seeing that a lot on the right these days. But then Vance turns around and says the decision should be left up to the states.
And that right there, that's the GOP doing their whole balancing act routine. They know they got to keep their base happy, and that base is largely anti-abortion, but a nationwide ban. That's a hard sell, even for some Republicans. Vance's position on this, contradictory as it seems, shows just how tricky this whole issue is, even within the party.
That's like they're walking a tightrope on that one, for sure. Okay, so you think you've got Vance pegged, right? Social conservative, maybe not on everything, but definitely playing to that crowd. And then, boom, he says something about marriage that throws everyone for a loop.
What was it? Something like people should stay in unhappy marriages with the kids.
Even violent ones, he implied. It was wild. I mean, at that point, it really gets you thinking, how much of what this guy's saying is really what he believes deep down? And how much is just him, I don't know, playing to the audience he wants to win over?
It's a great question. Is this conviction? Or is it calculation? Because let's not forget, there's a whole other side to JD Vance that we haven't even touched on yet.
You're talking about his business dealings.
Oh, yeah. And let me tell you, things get interesting there. For example, did you know that Vance spent a good chunk of time working at this firm, Revolution LLC?
Rings a bell, but I'm not totally familiar. What's the big deal?
Well, for starters, they've got ties to some pretty big-name Democrats and causes that, get this, Vance himself later criticizes. The irony is almost too perfect.
Wait, hold on. So the guy makes a name for himself criticizing big tech while he's benefiting from it.
Seems like it, doesn't it? And that right there, that's a potential weak spot for him. His opponents, they're going to jump all over that. Call him a hypocrite, say he's just another out-of-touch elitist.
And how's he going to defend himself? How do you square those actions with the whole populist message he's been pushing?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And it's one that's going to follow him around, I think. But wait, there's more. Because Vance also invested in this company, App Harvest. They do sustainable farming, mostly in Appalachia.
Okay, so is that him putting his money where his mouth is? Like he wrote about the region's struggles, now he's trying to help? Or is this just a smart business move by a politician who knows how to play the game?
And that, my friend, is the question this whole dossier makes us ask about JD Vance. Is he being genuine? Or is it all strategy? Because honestly, the lines get pretty blurry with this guy.
This is fascinating stuff, right? I mean, we're talking about a guy who, by all accounts, is full of contradictions. We've seen how he's changed or how he's presented himself differently, at least. And honestly, it feels like we've got more questions now than when we started.
And that's what makes him such a compelling figure in politics, wouldn't you say? You can't just stick Vance in a box and call it a day. He plays with those contradictions, makes you think.
It's true. And you know what? By doing that, he's forcing a conversation, right? People have to confront how complicated American politics really are. It's not simple.
Not at all.
Yeah.
But getting back to Vance, I mean, this deep dive using this dossier as our guide, what does it tell us? This is a man with ambition, that's for sure. He's smart. He's got that charisma.
Yeah, you can't deny that. He knows how to tell a story, that's for sure. But he's also clearly a sharp political operator. And like you were saying, a total lightning rod for controversy, which, let's be honest, in politics, sometimes that's not a bad thing.
It keeps things interesting, that's for sure. But it does make you wonder, what's next for JD Vance? Where does he go from here?
Right. Does he keep walking that line between populism and, well, more traditional conservatism? Can he actually be a unifying figure for the Republican Party with these views? Or are they going to end up pushing away potential allies?
It's going to be fascinating to watch it all play out.
Well, as we wrap up our little deep dive here, I think one thing's for sure. JD Vance is a force to be reckoned with, plain and simple. Whether you agree with his views or not, this is a guy who's making waves in American politics, and you just can't deny that.
Absolutely. And I think the takeaway here, for anyone listening, is that next time you see Vance's name pop up in the headlines, remember this conversation. Remember those complexities we talked about, all those contradictions and those unanswered questions? Because he's a walking, talking question mark, that's for sure. And his story, well, it's far from over.
Well said. And on that note, thanks to everyone for joining us on this deep dive into the world of JD Vance. Until next time, keep asking those tough questions and stay curious, everybody.